such kind of what to say, such kind of movement started. But at the same time, what was the situation in India? And now what is the situation in Europe and in India? It has never run parallelly to each other. They have always been very, very different. So while we talk about such topics, I think people should uh, focus on how to solve the issues which are what to say, relevant only to India. They should not focus on what's going on in USA and how some random feminist is standing naked on the streets. That is stupidity. That has no validity, and I don't know how is it going to empower women. So we had our own methods, we had our own philosophies and social setups, which are probably lost in people. Obviously, because of colonization and such things, because it hampers uh, with the way people think in a means in a long term duration. It hampers with it. So it has been hampered, and I think people should work on it and think about it like that in such perspectives, that how do we solve the current issues, how do we raise kids who are aware about such issues, how do we not feed our kids the education which is mean to be fed to the kids studying in USA. So that point needs to be taken up by someone, actually everyone.
Right. It's very important indeed. And as you pointed, you cannot look at the symptom and somehow try to cure the cause without identifying what the cause is. So you always have to go back to the root cause of the problem. And so I think it might be worthwhile for me to just frame where I think that the root cause of these problems, not all of them, but a good amount, a good fraction of them come from. So if you look at our ancient Indian society, Hindu society, Dharmic society, and I basically treat all of these as synonyms because our ancient culture is the Hindu culture, whether people accept it or not. It is a ancient traditional Hindu society which has informed the values and the structure of the country. So in those days, there were examples where it is shown that men and women would bathe together in the lake, and their vastrams would be out on the banks of those rivers. That's why you have the story of Krishna Chor. He would run away with the vastrams, things like that. And so, in those instances, there were not any, from what I could tell and what I could understand, any reports of molestation or misbehavior against the opposite gender, because there was that openness. Now, even if you look at the clothes that women used to wear in those days, we did not have the technology of stitching. So it was one single cloth that was draped, and there was a lot of stuff being exposed as well. Like, a good amount of skin was being shown on the body. And that did not really incite people into, quote unquote, the rape like behavior or anything that you hear of today in the media. We can come back into the media exaggerations as well. And I think it's worth touching upon that. But just to go back to those points, after the Islamic invasion, this sense of propriety about how women should dress, this whole burqa culture, hijab culture, where if you expose your skin, it's your fault if somebody else is attracted. And so that sense of shame had been imported from the Arabian soil onto the Bharatiya soil. And then thereon, this sense of maryada about how women should dress and how they should not dress became a very important topic. Today, also, if you go to southern India, it is a little less impacted by the Mughal invasion than northern India. And so one of my friends who's Tamil, his mother, she had visited a Sikh friend, and the Sikh friend had taken her to a gurdwara in the north. So the Sikh friend asked her to cover her head with the pallu, because that's what you do, right, when you enter the gurdwara and all. And this Tamil lady refused to do that. She said, in my Indian Hindu culture, women only cover their heads when the husband is dead. Until then, you will not cover your heads. So this whole thing about like head covering and all was also not our ancient culture. It is actually coming from these people that, okay, somehow women have to show humility and they have to cover their heads, whereas men don't have to show that. And so a lot of these things about women being more needing to be more humble, needing to be a bit more shy, all of these attributes actually came from the time of invasion. But it got a lot worse also during the British period, because you had this whole Victorian sense of propriety, right? Where again women were like covered from head to toe, and they had to wear that wig, and they had to like wear those fancy hats, and they had to wear like sleeves which are all the way up to here, and ankle length outfits. And so even the Britishers actually discouraged women from showing skin during the 17th, 18th century. And of course, things became a bit more liberal. If you just go back to the evolution of the swimsuit, even in the US itself, you will see how swimsuits differed from the 1900s to the 2000s. And the earliest swimsuits were like complete like body covers. So therefore, a lot of this shame game really entered into our social psyche after a certain point, but it was not present earlier on. Now, it is true. Just one more point on this whole catcalling business. What has happened today, unfortunately, in our culture, is that men and women are not able to bond with each other without women being told that you are being harassed. Suppose in more ancient times, let's say in the Western culture, if a guy goes to a restaurant or he goes to a bar, he could strike a conversation with a woman, and he could show interest. Can I buy you a coffee? Can I do this? Can I do that? Today, that will be seen as sexual advances. That, oh, how dare you approach me? You're harassing me. I never asked you to come into my space. But imagine that if you take away that component, how will you establish courtship, especially in a society where you don't have arranged marriages in the West? How can a guy approach a woman without being said that you're harassing me? How can he even try to flirt with her without saying that, okay, you are troubling me and I'm going to call the cops? So this has become an issue, and there are very strong evidences that it reflects in the fertility drop in the US. Now, even at the workplace, usually, in earlier 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, couples used to get married at the workplace. Now, that's being discouraged because it's a distraction from work, and somehow this whole workplace harassment policy is trying to resist this movement. So, in the previous workplace, my manager actually fell for somebody working on his team, and she had to leave uh, for them to continue on. She had to leave it. So they got engaged afterwards, but it was at the sacrifice of her job. So these things are very troubling and very problematic. So when it comes to this catcalling business, some people are just desperate, no doubt about it. Some people are just extremely, uh, low culture. They don't have enough maryada. They don't have enough manners. All of these things. Maybe not a good upbringing. There's that component also. But a component of it is just that, okay, there's an attractive girl, and I feel compelled, just as an evolutionary reaction, to reach out to her and announce that I'm interested in you. And so there could be that innocent aspect of it as well. And it's not always meant to be a harassment. So we have to figure out which one is which, and how much of it is just bad behavior and how much of it is innocent. And lastly, just one point on this whole rape culture accusation about India, about Bharat. I have done the statistics on this. The rape incidents in India are 1.8 out of 10,000. In the US, it is 27. That's 15 times higher than India. And in Europe, it is much, much, much higher. Like I think UK is like 40 or 50, and South Africa is like 135, 140 something. That means, imagine that so far in the media, in the American media, in the European media, in the damn Indian secular media, we've constantly been fed this narrative that rapes happen in India. And they do. And I'm not discounting the fact that even a single rape is something to be taken lightly, not at all. But we have to uh, measure proportion, and we have to accept that no matter how clean a society can be, there will always be miscreants. There will always be people who misbehave. There will always be people who are criminal minded. And we have to figure out a way to safeguard our men and women from such miscreants in society. But to say that there's an entire country where there's a pandemic of rapes happening and this constant reportage about it is also inaccurate.
So, what I think about it is, it's not Means more than the role of media, what has been happening is people have got this tendency to rather whine about things without going into the depth of it. Like someone said that India has the rape culture, and everyone starts saying the same thing. They are not ready to, for example, you found out the statistics, but not everybody does that. I did it, but not everybody does that. So they are not trying to do it. They are saying, means I am saying that they are saying it, I am not saying it. They are saying that India has a rape culture. So what are you personally doing to solve it? Are you doing something, or are you just being a social media activist? Are you trying to even find out the root cause? Because even understanding something uh, makes you subconsciously do many things to solving the issue. So you are not even trying to find out the reasons, you are just crying about it. And as you mentioned about how women were being treated in West versus in Bharat, so yes, it again comes to the point that how women have been perceived in various cultures, or you can say religions. Means I'm not talking about how it is now, I'm going back to the roots again. That if we talk about the religious texts, then how women have been portrayed in each of those religious texts, be it Hindu text, be it Christian, Muslim, any of such texts, how women have been perceived in that. Because the root thought process of a person comes from what the generations has taught them. And if the generations have taught you wrong thing and you are trying to be right, then it is a difficult process. And if the generations have told you the right thing and you are trying to be wrong, then it is also a difficult process. Means shifting from the trends is a difficult process. But if someone has shifted, then bringing them back to it is not a difficult process. So what media has been doing is they are denying the root cause of it. They are just whining about it and crying about that this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And as soon as you try to point out why is this happening, they just dismiss your logics. They say that no, nothing like that is happening. India is the rape capital. Why is it the rape capital? You are not ready to show us the statistics. You
There's
are
no
you are not
proof.
ready to show us the. Yes, there are no proof. They are not ready to show us the or discuss about the root causes. I haven't seen any single discussions on any news channel about why is this happening. I have just seen that okay, this is happening here happened, but nothing in the root of it.
So there's a very
So I
sorry, go ahead.
always, yes. So
No, so
whenever
that
I talk to, okay, this voice
after
is
you,
so
after
breaking.
you.
Okay, let
Sorry.
me continue. Yes. So whenever I talk to students, means the people who are still students, I always ask them to check the thing they just shared. Means just in case, for example, this GDP thing, many were sharing the wrong data because someone published it. So I asked them to check it themselves, that I am giving you the link, go check what is actually happening, because you are a student. You are not supposed to believe on anything. You are supposed to find, think, research about it, analyze what is happening. You are supposed to infer things from the raw data. You are not supposed to read someone else analysis or interpretation of it. So yes, you were saying something.
Sorry. Uh, Very
Yes.
good point. That the reason the news is veiling this fact and they dismiss your arguments is because for them to say that somehow this is rooted to some religion or some culture would be denying the fact that um, all religions and all cultures are not equal. They are not. And and here I don't even want to make an argument about inferiority or superiority, though there are arguments to be made about that. Let's be very clear on that also, that there are certainly certain cultures which are better suited for growth, for overall prosperity, happiness, spiritual, adhyatmic, all of these things. There are certain cultures better suited, no doubt about it. But to point out that the root cause is in certain religions would be denying that narrative that the media is trying to basically push away. and it would go against their paymasters, the people who are promoting all of these things. Now, even if you look at Sanatana Dharma, it is the only living tradition in the world where the feminine is worshipped as a devi and the masculine is worshipped as a deva, and the Napunsak is also worshipped. That's why you have Ardhanarishwara in the form of Dakshinamurti or Shiva. So half masculine, half feminine. And then when you refer to Brahman, Paramananda Brahma, uh, it is Napunsaklinga, because that is where both the masculine and feminine collapse into the core ground reality, which is the absolute reality. And so, therefore, we have accommodated all of these things very beautifully, and we have accorded respect to every single possible sex that there is. And here's the mistake that the West has made, unfortunately. But okay, I'll come back to that in a moment. But if you look at Islam, for instance, it actually speaks of women as trading them as property. You can trade women as you can trade property. And of course, there's this hijab and stoning women and all of those things. The Bible says that if on your wedding night you discover that your wife is not a virgin, you must take her to her father's doorstep and crush her skull with a stone on the father's doorstep. That's what the Bible says. Now, somebody may want to deny this, and they are welcome to deny it, but it's there in the scriptures. And one can easily argue that what is there in the scriptures, and when a society follows those scriptures diligently for X number of centuries, it becomes part of their social fabric, those norms and those ethical injunctions. And that's how you have this Victorian morality. And that's how you have this Islamic thing about hijab. Only 7 or 8 or 5 years ago, Saudi Arabia allowed people to drive, women to drive. They issued license to women only this last decade. And there are so many draconian laws over there. And so that is what differentiates. If you look at Bharat even today, we, in spite of all the challenges we face, which is pretty much the topic of our discussion, we are low on resources, we are overpopulated, we are still growing past this colonial baggage that we've carried. We've been deprived of a very fantastic GDP growth that we had before the Mughal era and before the colonial British era, and we are trying to recover from all of it. And yet, on the whole, I think we are doing okay. We are not as bad as projected by people, as projected by certain institutions, as projected by the media, as projected by uninformed Indians themselves. And there is so much more growth left, no doubt about it. But if we begin to curse ourselves as Bharatiyas, saying that our nation is fraught with issues and there is nothing worthwhile that we have over here, we have actually divorced ourselves from a very rich and ancient heritage that our ancestors have bequeathed upon us. And therefore, my suggestion to all viewers also would be that take what you have, explore into your own past, explore present theories, try to meld them together, study urban development, study theology, study philosophy, study sciences, not social sciences, because I don't regard them as science at all. And learn as much as you can about life and try to integrate these things together, because only a holistic set of understandings will propel you and prepare you for the future.
Right. So, as you rightly mentioned, that how we are in a process of recovery and how we are doing good in it. So yes, I was actually going to conclude with that point that yes, we were facing a lot of things for generations, and that still is somewhere in the minds of every single one among us. And but at the same time, we should also be aware that it has taken centuries to bring us here. But I don't think it will take more than a few decades if we start working to bring us out of it. And as we were talking about what different religious texts mention about women, uh, I'd say that rather let the people rather let the audience find it out themselves, because I don't think anything more is required to make them curious to read those things. Read all the scriptures, of various religions, and it is not a very big deal nowadays. You can get everything on internet. You have PDFs, you have verified kind of documents which have been verified by their supreme religious authorities. So it can be done. And with that, I think we should end this particular conversation now and continue in some other one.
Definitely, and I think we have many topics left unexplored. So postmodernism is one thing that we could discuss. We spoke to a good degree about free will, about the Jagat, about how it came about. We spoke about so many other things prior, and I think each of these can take up a separate topic, including childhood upbringing, dive deeper into the impacts of social media, about helicopter parenting, so on and so forth. So yeah, let's continue this dialogue. And for now, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think it's seeded a lot more that I can think of. So I'll just close off on Shanti Mantra, or perhaps if you could close off on a mantra since I started on one.
No, no, you please continue.
Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnaat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Namaste.
Namaste. Uh, Stop streaming it, maybe.